Hi guys, hope you're doing well. This is Eugene Voronuk and another season of Do Not Lean podcast, friendly talks about digital design and Korea. Today we have a guest, Michael Scott from Agoda. He is design lead, and Agoda, by the way, is a online travel agency and meta search for travelers. Hi Michael.
Hey Eugene, thanks for having me today.
How are you? How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. It's Monday here in Bangkok. Pretty hot, so I'm sat at home in my nice air-conditioned study.
It's also like Monday. Monday is a beautiful day at Kiev, so in Kiev we have almost the same wonderful weather. Not like so hot, but still good.
Yeah, there's three types of weather here: hot, hotter, and wet, and it's just on a constant cycle.
Yeah, we have during the winter gray and gray. I think just two of them. Yeah. So today we're gonna talk about your experience. How have you got into the point of being lead at Agoda? And can you just briefly go through your career and tell a little bit what was your career path as designer?
Yeah, of course. So I'm originally from the UK in London. I had a more traditional kind of design education. So I studied graphic design at a place called Ravensbourne, which was at the time just outside of London. Think kind of history of design, studying typography, color theory. We would spend hours kind of drawing out the same letter forms in certain fonts and stuff, and then observing them on the wall. So I did that for kind of 3 years, and then once I graduated, I did a couple of internships at what you would sort of think about as more traditional graphic design studios, kind of very small teams, kind of a blend of advertising, branding, and it never quite fit for me. I felt like I had this kind of love of design, but I didn't really feel that kind of small design studio environment was the best for me. And then there were two moments where I sort of were quite impactful for me, where I sort of realized perhaps that wasn't for me, and what I really wanted to do was kind of go into more like a product design kind of role. And those were in my final year of university. We had some Japanese students who came over, and we sort of hosted them for a week, and we ran some kind of design competition. And then myself and my buddy John, we took them out in London, and he had one of those, the very first iPhones. And we didn't speak Japanese, they didn't speak much English, but we had an iPhone and Google Translate. And it was just such a fascinating kind of night out. We took them to, British pub, and had the fish and chips and traditional kind of British experiences. And it was all communicated through this device. So that seemed really kind of powerful to me. And then about the same time, I joined for a contract at this company called FutureGov. And they worked a lot with kind of local government and kind of going in there. And they had a couple of products themselves. And they were basically about kind of bringing these kind of more traditional government bodies online and how to kind of operate in this new online world. And it was through them that I realized that, these digital products can have a real change on people's lives, a real impact, especially in government where, your user base is basically everyone. One of their products was about identifying kind of inefficiencies in care work. So how can you reduce the burden of kind of paperwork, bureaucracy within for carers, so that they can spend more time kind of on the front line with the people that actually need their help. So, think maybe the elderly, or it's kind of children in sort of dysfunctional kind of families. So that's kind of the area in which they're operating in. So, at that moment you see how the products that you're helping to design can have these very tangible, powerful impacts on the world around you. That kind of put me onto this track of maybe the world of kind of online digital products and stuff is where I want to be kind of applying my skills. And about the same time, the kind of London tech startup scene was growing. So I sort of went freelance, sort of like a generalist capacity, helping these early stage startups get from their initial kind of concept to some kind of MVP and launch. So I was pretty fortunate to work in a lot of kind of interesting fields through there. I think the health sector was particularly interesting. Again, it's like, how do these kind of digital tools come in and assist these people, kind of making a difference in people's lives. So yeah, I did that for a number of years, and then sort of found myself at this crossroads where I was running out of steam from a freelance side of things. It's part of that is doing the design work, but then you're also kind of running this small business as well. And I was also I was working from home quite a bit and just missing being in like a team environment. So just put some feelers out to see what was kind of out there in a more like permanent capacity. And about the same time, I just got married, and we sort of, our lease was coming up on our apartment. It's like, do we want to remain in London, or do we want to go traveling? I very nearly moved to Canada for a couple of years. And then, just one morning woke up and I had this message from Agoda. And honestly, my first reaction was like, what is Agoda? I'd never heard of it before. But had a couple of calls with the team. They went well, and I kind of flew out to Bangkok for a week to kind of meet face to face and see if it was not just the right opportunity in terms of the job, but also whether Bangkok was a city that I could see myself moving to and living in. And I'm happy to say that 3 years later I'm still here, loving both the job and Bangkok and Thailand.
How was it, the whole process? How was the contrast of moving from London to Bangkok?
So first of all, we have an amazing kind of workplace team. They made the whole like stress of relocation just super easy. They took care of everything. They put us up in a nice kind of apartment when we got here for a month, just so we could sort of get our bearings. I mean, honestly, I don't think it was that stressful. Like, I was ready for some kind of adventure, so that's what it's kind of felt like this whole time. There was there's some struggles with not fluently speaking the language, but it's very minor things, like if something goes wrong in your apartment, it's a little more tricky to fix. But other than that, it's just it's been a great experience. It's kind of opened me up to a bunch of different cultures and experiences, and being able to very easily travel. Like, Bangkok is a great hub to kind of explore this part of the world. It was an area of the world that I wanted to come and check out anyway. Before the job came up, so it's been quite a privilege to be able to kind of base myself here and take the pace a little bit slower and get some kind of insights from kind of the local friends that I've made here and whatnot.
Which part of Agoda are you working on?
So I've been pretty lucky in my kind of 3 years here. I feel like I've kind of experienced many different areas of the business and the product, from the front end product with hotels to some of the internal tools that we use, customer service, pricing, marketing. So I was able to get a real kind of broad understanding of how Agoda runs, not just as this kind of consumer-facing product, but also as a business, and that's been kind of super rewarding. And then right now, I'm currently focused on our flights funnel. So for just over a year, we've been adding flights to our kind of product offerings. So traditionally, we sell hotel rooms, and we're kind of looking at customer demand, and we had like a white funnel flights product that we had on the site, and there was no kind of optimization on it, like no real work was going on there, but still people were booking flights. They were coming to Agoda and they were booking flights. So it seemed like a natural next thing to add on top of hotels, and especially if you look at the sort of competitive landscape, especially in Asia. You have these kind of super apps that they're offering everything from hotels, flights, car rental. I think even saw the other day that you can book your Japanese rail pass on there. So it felt like we had to begin to add these new offerings in order to remain kind of relevant, if you like. And And also it was kind of the biggest challenge about this was that it was sort of out of the norm for how we build product at Agoda. So we're very data driven. Everything is run as an experiment, and the idea of doing like spending several months on something and then doing like a big reveal, it's sort of outside of the norm of what we normally do. It's kind of like build something fast, learn, and then iterate on it over time. Whereas this was like a brand new thing. So we had we had no data to really be like any kind of guiding light. So what did that mean? Well, it meant we had to kind of go and look at what the competition was doing, but also kind of from a design perspective, how can we learn from our users? So we ran a couple of labs, and went out and spoke to people about like what is it about flights that these products help you in order to find and book them. And there's sort of a few things that we kind of learned from this. One was that timing was super important to people. Perhaps I'm a single guy and I'm a bit more flexible with my time compared to say like a busy family operating on like a tight schedule, can only travel like certain times of the year or certain times of the day. What if they're landing somewhere and there's a time difference? If I've got a young kid, do I want to be landing somewhere at 2:00 in the morning? So time was definitely like a key decision maker. And then we also had like a lot of data on the hotel side that we could sort of analyze. So we can see that if within different kind of origins, the majority of the bookings would be within like a kind of 2-hour flight time. So sort of looked like we would probably be operating with like mostly kind of short haul. So that gave us like an area of focus. What are the needs of the user when they're considering like a short haul kind of flight compared to more long haul stuff. And at the same time, we also wanted to try and introduce a kind of brand new design language because it's good to kind of keep up to date with the trends that are appearing across kind of various products. And it was deemed that our kind of hotel funnel was kind of becoming a little bit out of date. So what's tricky about trying to update the UI when you're in this very kind of strict A/B testing, experiment-driven business is that a lot of the times if you do like a massive change, it's going to fail and it's going to have like a negative impact on the business. So we wanted to use this opportunity from launching something new to also kind of bring in a new kind of design language. And the question now will be how do we kind of update it on the hotel side?
By the way, how do you communicate with users regarding new updates?
I think the way we kind of like experiment, it's lots of kind of iterative little changes to get to like that end goal. So we try to make sure that the changes we're introducing, particularly from a visual standpoint, they're not too dramatic. Where I do think we can improve on and kind of going forward is identifying like what the core kind of components of the product are that will anchor the user to, okay, I understand that I'm having an Agoda experience, I'm booking on Agoda. Maybe it's the header or the footer or this whatever those components are. So I think you can begin to roll out like these changes in a kind of gradual way that's not too dramatic. So I mean, even with the flights, I mean it was pretty bare bones. It was looking at what are the smallest kind of changes from a visual standpoint we can make. It was a bit more dramatic on the app. Web is catching up, but yeah, I think it's going to serve as a nice foundation to be able to make these changes because to your point, they won't appear too dramatic.
Right. So you are doing this gradually.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, I was curious, what is the market that you are targeting?
It's definitely Southeast Asia. I'd say between sort of Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia. Those are like the core markets. China is a goal. It's quite difficult to kind of operate in when you're a foreign company. But still we see significant kind of business in terms of bookings in China as well. but yeah, mostly Southeast Asia.
Why it's complicated to get into the Chinese market is because they have their own services which substitute foreign companies.
Yeah, I mean they've got the big kind of the players in China like Trip.com. They have very strong kind of market presence there, and I think from a consumer point of view, it's a trust thing. We find that like Chinese users tend to trust Chinese products more, which I can understand. But I think moving forward, it will be trying like to build that trust, and also just to understand more about like what the consumer behavior is of people from a specific country like China. Is it vastly different to what perhaps we see in Southeast Asia, for example?
What is the core value for users of the whole Agoda product, just in a nutshell?
I think some of the things we touched on with flights. Such I could talk more to the flight stuff. That's kind of where I've been this past year. It comes down to the timing is super important, and also I think it comes down to price. It's quite a competitive landscape in which we operate. So I'd say since launching, it's been about kind of like how do we onboard kind of new suppliers, ensuring that not only that we're competitive on price. Obviously, price is big, especially when a lot of your business is coming from the meta search engines of the world. Often, if you're not competitive on price there, people never even kind of reach your site. But also in terms of are we optimizing for the most popular routes? Do we have all of the the airlines that people are used to, especially as we go into larger markets like India, where there's lots of kind of domestic flights going on. Do we have the Air Asias of India? Like, what are the kind of domestic Indian airlines that people are used to kind of seeing? Because I think unless there's something to kind of unless someone sees something that they can anchor themselves with, be it an airline they're used to, then they're probably not going to come back to Agoda next time they need to book a flight.
What kind of responsibilities do you have currently as design lead?
What's been really, really cool about the flights project over the past kind of 12 months is not only being part of this kind of like, launch of a brand new offering at Agoda, which has been pretty crazy, but it's also been a great platform for me. So I wanted to move more into like a people management role. So as the kind of the team on flights grew, so we went from myself and a PM in the beginning to very quickly there was multiple PMs and about 40 engineers, and we had another designer join the team as well, and then I'd say maybe like 4 months later we had one more designer. So it was kind of transitioning from like a project lead role to kind of half and half in terms of having my first direct report. So the challenges that came with that. How do I ensure that I'm offering like good guidance and thinking more about an individual's kind of career progression and what they want to achieve, and how do you begin to have impact through your product, not through your own kind of craft, but through the people that you're ultimately kind of responsible for. So what was really nice is that I was able to kind of transition into this role kind of gradually. It wasn't like a sort of trial by fire, which was really nice because it allowed me to, I think I was a little naive as to things like suddenly you spent your whole career being very hands-on. It's been very craft dominant. You've been executing all everything from a design side to being hands off. Like I thought that would be kind of easy, but I still found myself, taking on, the odd ticket here and there, and then suddenly when you go from having one direct report to four, suddenly your time is really split across that, and instead of having like long periods of the day that you can kind of go into kind of deep thinking and really like a really focused state, you're bouncing from like meeting to meeting to one-on-ones, and you have pockets of 30 minutes here, 45 minutes there, and I just found that was not productive for kind of design work. So I had to kind of be honest with myself and go back to like kind of ruthlessly prioritizing and delegating as well. I think that was kind of the key to moving on to that. So yeah, my current kind of roles are kind of 4 direct reports that are split over 3 products. So that includes flights, packages, which is flights plus hotels. And then the third one is a collaboration with a Japanese travel agency. So we've been working closely with them to assist them on their front-end product. And in exchange, we can kind of onboard sort of what you would see as like traditional Japanese accommodation. So think kind of ryokans and kind of hotels that come with onsens, and kind of domestic Japanese travelers have quite a unique way of booking. Everything comes as like a package. So you might get like you get the room, you have a certain number of people, and it might be for like, you might have a celebration package for say a birthday, or you have different meal plans and this kind of stuff. So these were like features that we didn't have on our product. So we've had to kind of build those out to bring on this new supply of accommodation, but also cater for the users who will ultimately be using that.
How product designers work on the part of work that they are dedicated for? I mean, what kind of meetings, what kind of processes are you following?
So I think for that, we've got to go back to like not too long ago, right? So I joined 3 years ago, and it was maybe early 20s hire. Wasn't too long before that there was only like 12 designers on the team, and now we're at like 50. So we've seen this rapid kind of growth across the team as the business has grown, which is awesome. Comes with a lot of kind of new challenges that we're currently kind of figuring out. But I'd say the best thing in terms of that is that it's not a case of say like a PM coming to a designer and being like, oh, can you make this look good? As in like the last little bit. Now we see that design is involved in like the end-to-end process, which has been really, really awesome to see. So in terms of kind of how we kind of operate, it's a very kind of agile environment. So we work on like 2-week sprints. We are normally kind of like a sprint or 2 ahead of the engineers to make sure that we're not kind of becoming a blocker. And yeah, it's kind of a combination of like collaboration with PMs on the business side, making sure that we're kind of touching base with engineers to make sure that the kind of solutions to the design solutions to the problems we're coming up with are feasible. It's regular critique and feedback amongst designers, as well as kind of bringing in the engineers and the PMs as well. So and I think what was nice through the flights project is that traditionally like the whole design team they sit together, and then you go off into your respective scrums and to have the conversations that you need to have with the various team members. But because we had such a large team on flights, it just made sense for us to go and like sit directly with them, which sounds such a small thing, but allowed us to form much stronger kind of working relationships with everyone involved, especially when we weren't just doing this for web, we had to do it for web, mobile web, and both iOS and Android. And we also had to do it in 5 months, which was, like, thinking back now, just feels insane. So through like it, we just had to be just really sensible with our time. So being embedded with all of those teams meant that you could have a 5-minute conversation and come to a conclusion, whereas before you might need like a 30-minute, 45-minute meeting. So it's just looking for ways to kind of streamline a lot of the process. And yeah, I think that was like really, really effective. Kind of like a sort of startup mentality. But we still sit with them all now, even though we're kind of 6, 7, 8 months further down the line, because it just still makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And from design perspective, do you have a dedicated person or a couple of people that are working on design system or design language, and they are responsible for consistency of cross-platform product?
Yes, we do. So not always, but we do now. And this has been kind of really great to see. So I think one of the downsides of kind of operating in this kind of very experiment heavy environment is that it does lead to some odd experiences popping up on the front end. And especially, I think it's probably one of the growing pains as well, as you go from a team of like 20 to 30 to 40 to 50. Like, how do you maintain that kind of consistency across kind of all products? And also, I said one of the main differences between kind of flights and hotel is that hotel is kind of broken down into kind of homepage, search page, property page, booking form, and you have kind of separate teams operating in their own worlds. So that's another barrier against kind of creating a consistent kind of user experience. Whereas on flights, we try to each designer kind of you'd be more responsible for like a feature that might touch like the full funnel. So I think that definitely makes things easier from a consistency point of view. As for a specific kind of design systems team, so we started with the app, and we formed a team, and it was, again, we still operate in this experimental kind of environment. So we had to prove that there was kind of value in doing this. So they outlined like some core components that they wanted to build and release, and kind of see the impact that it was going to have on the app. So yeah, they got kind of funding to put a full Scrum team together to build these components, and it started to be pretty successful. So that team has grown from just focusing on the apps. Now they're moving onto the website to see if they can kind of replicate the same success. And I'd say one of my favorite things that I'm kind of super excited about at the moment is that about 2 years ago we started forming like what we call a design technology team. So they're sort of hybrid design and developers, and so they work closely with designers. And the reason that we started that in the beginning was to basically enhance our prototypes that we could take to user labs. So they started, using Framer, and it just became it created a much more real kind of prototype that we could test, and that has now evolved as we kind of build out these design systems teams into assisting the engineers with building out these components in code and contributing from a code side back into the overall design system. So that's, and I think that's been going for like a couple of months now, and you already see the sort of the increase in kind of components being added to the library. Yeah, exactly. And they're much closer to both the design team and the tech team. So it's kind of it's looking for ways to bridge these kind of like cross teams and kind of drive more collaboration. So I'm hoping, in the future we'll start to be seeing more of a consistent kind of design experience across the products. If I think about how that side of the design team has progressed in the 3 years I've been, it's going from having this like one like sketch file that like everybody passed around. It was like it was always slightly out of date, and no one was like really owning kind of like the contributing back to it.
and yelling from one room to another, do we have this drop down?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to now, like it's this live thing that exists. Now we've incorporated like abstract, so it obviously all sort of drips down when new updates happen. And yeah, to your point, it just speeds up like individuals' workflows, so that you're focusing on what is the core problem you're trying to solve for here, not where's this like what shade of blue does this kind of the button need to be. Also, we ended up with about like I think it was something like 3,000 to 4,000 different colours that were like on the lights. I mean, Agoda's a pretty colourful kind of brand anyway. But it's
never enough. Just need to add one more color because it's not given the right, the right impression.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely need like 40 different shades of blue to.
What is the most challenging part of your work?
I think for me right now, it's probably the transition from my kind of roles and responsibilities. So, as a sort of individual contributor, it was about kind of the continued mastery of my kind of design craft, leadership kind of, but without the direct reports. So kind of more on a product level. And obviously the continuation of kind of shipping the high quality design work and looking for perhaps like inefficiencies in the processes that we have from an IC point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And now shifting to like more of a people management role. You're obviously, like we discussed earlier, you're kind of hands off. You're having to have impact through others. I think trying to create a culture kind of guidance in order to kind of keep people moving in the same direction. It's a little tricky for me as well because the people I'm managing are on very different kind of products. So how to kind of maintain some kind of sense of team within kind of that group of people. And then I think that one of the most challenging things is going into like these kind of one-on-ones, right? Where obviously as designers, we spend a lot of time debating kind of the designs, having critiques, providing feedback. And it's one thing to be providing feedback on, a new feature that you're trying to launch that, doesn't have any emotion. It's not going to kind of have an emotional reaction to the feedback you're providing. And it's another thing to be kind of trying to provide feedback and guidance to an individual where you kind of got to look them in the eye and there's going to be a kind of emotional response to what you're kind of telling this person.
That's tough.
So yeah, it's interesting. And yeah, so there's this book, Radical Candor, that I just finished reading. And yeah, to do with this kind of like giving feedback to kind of individuals. And there's this part it talks about, it's called like ruinous empathy, where you're kind of trying to be too nice and you're not kind of getting to the core thing that you're trying to tell this person. So, ultimately they end up walking away, without really knowing what it is that the feedback that you've been trying to kind of provide. And so, yeah, that had like a kind of profound effect on me. I think I realized that perhaps I was doing that too much. And no one goes forward if you're just kind of like providing nice, loose kind of feedback to people. So that's something that I'm going to be taking on moving forward to try and improve upon.
It's a big challenge to give a nice feedback being Eastern European guy, because Eastern Europe is famous for straightforward and direct feedback. That is, just very opposite culture to what is in UK.
It's an interesting point you make there about culture. Having, come from, I'd probably say like, you say that, Ukrainians, but probably very direct.
Yep.
People from Asia tend to not be very direct, and especially when it comes to kind of levels of seniority and challenging upwards.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say coming from the UK, probably maybe somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like having worked in Asia now for a few years, I think, and now going into like this more kind of management role, it becomes really important to cater to some of these kind of cultural kind of learnings and backgrounds. And I've definitely found myself recently kind of like perhaps providing like, advice that isn't going to resonate or isn't going to work with someone because, they have this like inherent cultural background that it doesn't work like that. So I had some really good conversations with some of my colleagues around this, and just like sharing their experiences and kind of what works for them. And that's been really, really great to kind of experience. And I think part of the reason why I wanted to come here as well was to experience what it is like to work with people from different backgrounds and different cultures. And
Right.
I think company wide there's about 80 different nationalities that work
Wow.
at Agoda. Yeah.
Do you mean just in design team?
No, on the design team it's less, but it's still pretty high.
Wow.
From kind of local Thai designers, Taiwanese, Chinese, Malaysian, American. I'm currently only Brit. Yeah, but it's a huge range of different backgrounds. So that's been really cool to see.
Wow, that's impressive. While working with designers, you were not only given a feedback, you were also estimating how those designers work. And do you have any kind of top 3 skills that you consider as the most important for UX designers?
This is something that comes up like quite a lot, especially when you're kind of in like a performance and personal growth point of view and trying to identify like where perhaps there are gaps or where the strengths are and whatnot. And for me, from like a personal side, I think let's consider like the kind of individual contributor kind of side, where craft is always going to be super important. You're always going to want to, like we mentioned before, you're always going to want to be kind of living up, seeking ways to improve your process or your understanding of like what good design is. I think we're pretty lucky with kind of today's online resources that this has become more accessible than kind of ever, and you don't even need that like traditional kind of form of education these days. You can there's some amazing kind of self-taught talent out there, which is great to see.
Right, especially in digital area.
Yeah,
traditional
absolutely.
education might be not really up to date.
Yeah, and especially if you've got to take things into consideration like taking out a student loan and kind of going into debt. Like it's not the only kind of way forward now. So I hope that kind of can encourage people that perhaps weren't looking to go into a career in a specific field to maybe like reconsider. So I think with all those resources kind of being out there and becoming even more kind of accessible, I put a lot of kind of weight more on the sort of like the softer skills. So it's things like communication. Are you kind of like, are you framing your your communication clearly? You coming with like a goal, context, problem, and your solution to that. Have you prepared beforehand, like the pros, the cons, like the implications of the design solution that you're kind of proposing? Are you
Right.
ready to have a open conversation about this? And also have you like read the room? Like what's your audience? It's no good going like super technical with a more kind of general kind of senior management team level if they're looking for like the bigger picture or like more strategic view, and you're super kind of focused into one specific area, then it's going to lead to some confusion. So I'd say communication is definitely up there. Then like collaboration. Are you kind of like looking to build these strong working relationships with PMs, with engineers and other designers? I definitely see that the most successful designers within the team at Agoda, they're the ones out there that are forming these relationships. They're having these conversations with the right people. I think it was some of the best advice I got given when I first joined was unshackle yourself from your desk. Don't don't just be like buried into, you know, whatever design tool it is you're using all the time.
Right.
You know, go out and, you know, if you have a question about a specific area of business that you don't know about, go and find out someone that does, and, you know, set up a coffee with them, go have lunch with them, and, you know, just in that 30 or, you know, 60 minutes, you'll learn infinitely more than you ever could do just like, you know, sat in front of your laptop. So yeah, I think that, you know, and, you know, collaboration and communication kind of go hand in hand. And then the last one I think is like curiosity. Again, you know, being curious enough to go out and find those answers. I think designers are kind of curious by nature anyway. You know, it definitely brought me out here. I think we have this like unique position or unique career where, you know, I didn't really know anything about online travel businesses before I started working at Agoda, and now I do. You know, if I'm not at Agoda forever, you know, I might move into a different field and, you know, kind of explore that from a design perspective, and I find that kind of really super rewarding. You know, one of the things I went to this conference last year, and there was a talk from a very well known online music streaming platform, and obviously they're based over in Europe, and the talk was about coming to Asia on like a research trip, and finding out why their kind of monthly subscription product wasn't doing as well in Asia. And so they, you know, went out and spoke to people, and it basically came down to the fact that, you know, a lot of people in places like Indonesia and Malaysia, they don't have credit cards or they don't have debit cards. So like cash is their predominant form of payment. So how can you sign up for a monthly subscription platform when you don't have a credit card? Well,
right.
You can't.
It's complicated.
And so, yeah, and at the end, it kind of like basically transpired that they went into different forms of like payment methods, like paying over the counter in a 7-Eleven. And it was just interesting, like having, you know, living in Asia, it all seemed so obvious to me, because, you know, that's how I might pay my electric bill, or, you know, all these different types of payments that exist over here to cater for this kind of user base. So yeah, and, you know, it was kind of curiosity that kind of brought me here, and you know, especially from a design perspective, it's just like constantly learning about ultimately people, you know, and what works for different people in different parts of the world.
I also wanted to ask you regarding recent book that you have read, but you already told it, and maybe you have any kind of recommendation for listeners.
Yeah,
Beside
sure.
that, any podcast that you like or something else?
So another book I first finished reading was called Guns, Germs, and Steel, which I really enjoyed. It's basically about kind of how civilization formed from like very early man, and it just blew my mind how something as simple as like moving from a like hunter gatherer to a farmer had such like huge impacts, like moving forward in history with you know, advancements in technology, and, you know, new diseases coming up because suddenly like everyone's kind of not moving around, and, you know, you're living close quarters with farm animals and this kind of stuff. So that was really fascinating to see how society changed through time, and the impacts that were had there.
Oh, I love such kind of books.
Yeah, I really recommend that one. And then a really good podcast I listen to is called Acquired, and it's basically kind of like deep dives on tech company IPOs and acquisitions. I find it's super well produced. I love how far back in time they go when they're talking about these things. So they've covered like everything from Uber to WeWork. I think the latest one was on WhatsApp, and it's just really interesting to, you know, especially with some of these larger products that you might use daily, like WhatsApp, to go right back to the beginning, and, you know, how it came to be, and how that kind of business's history looked like. So that's definitely a great one that I recommend.
Do you have any kind of product, digital or physical, that impressed you a lot? I mean, like any company that you're following and every news that you read was like, whoa, that was pretty cool.
I think one area that I've been kind of excited in is the whole like electric vehicle kind of area and like renewable energy. There's a kind of fast growing company in London called Arrival, and they basically build like electric vans. So they partnered with like UPS to deliver like 10,000 vans recently that would be kind of all electric. I think the vehicles themselves remind me of a lot of the vehicles that I've seen in like Japan when I visited. They got this sort of like certain kawaii charm about them. They're kind of cute. Also, I think as well, like since moving to a city that does Bangkok does struggle with air pollution on a kind of annual basis. It's definitely made me think about how technology maybe is beginning to kind of address these issues. My old boss, she moved back to the US to join a company that was kind of focused on like renewable energy from a kind of solar panel point of view, and how that expanded out into like smart grids. So kind of looking at the more like on an infrastructure level. And yeah, I'm definitely excited and interested to see how perhaps like the role of designers and design can begin to kind of impact this industry as well. On a similar note to the Arrival company, there's another company called Charge, and I think it utilizes a lot of like some of the Arrival tech as well, and it's basically an electric muscle car modeled off like the '60s Ford Mustang. So I mean the price tag makes me want to cry, but it definitely appeals to the kid in me from watching like those old school kind of car chases, like Bullet with Steve McQueen. So maybe when they do a remake with that, and just be a silent version of someone like driving around San Francisco. But the car looks very, very cool.
So that's what we will buy when we'll be 45, and it will be red.
We'll see. We'll see. Wait till you see the price tag, and then let me know if 45 seems doable.
Yeah, we have to earn the afford before, for sure. Okay, so then we're pretty close to the end, and the last question, which I'm really curious to ask you about, is there something that pisses you off? Just really, what makes you angry from your day-to-day life? It can be related to any kind of area, just personal work experience, so like society, culture, and etc., etc. And have you been thinking about any kind of resolution, any kind of idea to solve this?
I think right now it's kind of based off like the current situation, and the thing that is pissing me off is the news. If I'm honest, I think if you look, just take this like virus situation, right? I think when it first broke out, I was reading kind of news sources that I was finding on various subreddits, and I felt myself just getting like really, really anxious. I'd wake up in the morning and it'd be like addicted. I've got to, give me the next fix of like what terrible stuff is going on in the world, and like, it's all driven by like engagement, right? So the more sensationalized that people can make these stories, the more engagement they get, and the more eyeballs and attention they get on it. And I was like, this is ridiculous. It was the first time I'd ever really felt, physically impacted by what I was kind of consuming. And so I did a test. Like I stopped reading those sources. I cut it all out, and I just went to like the official like what is it, WHO or CDC sites, and immediately I felt like instantly calmer. It was more objective. It was more informational. There was no sensationalized headlines to do with it. It was kind of just facts. So it really got me thinking about, like if these platforms' only business model is like attention,
Right.
Then emotions like fear become become really good for business. So it's how to kind of break out of that cycle. I think we're living in this like super connected world now where information is just like instantly accessible, and I think we're only beginning to understand like what the kind of impacts that is kind of having on individuals and society. So I mean, ultimately, I don't know right now what the solution is. I mean, I know what worked for me on an individual level, in kind of cutting these certain kind of news sources out, and just trying to be more mindful of what I'm consuming. Who wrote this? Where did it come from? Is it is it trustworthy? And I think sadly we might not see like a dramatic shift until like a new business model is discovered that it doesn't require this like constant need for engagement and attention. We're starting to see it creep into some of these platforms, like Facebook and Twitter, but it's definitely a complicated one to fix. I like to think that there are people who are kind of digging into it in more detail. I guess time will tell.
You're doing a great job, and you made a great decision to trying to avoid this kind of news, as later on, just in the future, there will be more fake news, especially with all deepfakes and amazing technologies appearing now. And you can imagine how anxious you could be. You just need to filter this to have a new skill, just either not to read or to analyze. But human beings are not analyzing on purpose just from scratch, so that's why it's complicated. So you did a really wise decision, this kind of sedation.
It was crazy how immediate the effect was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the quick fix is super simple, actually. Just don't read a lot of news. If you read, just use trustworthy resources, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, we'll see.
Oh, that was super cool and exciting and interesting to talk to you, Michael.
No, it wasn't. I had a great time. That was really fun.
It was really like a good conversation if we were just in a bar, not like in a
I think that conference. I think that was the key. That was the good bit of advice at the beginning.
Yeah, we will not tell the truth to listeners, but we have drunk a little bit before in advance.
I had 3 beers whilst we have this conversation.
You are tough. I just took one, so it was good. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for listening, guys. I would appreciate your feedback on Apple Podcast or other media resources. Stay tuned and keep healthy.